back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. I'm Lindsay, and in my fantasy book recommendation video, I did mention how I was going to do a video about the Six of Crows and Shadow and Bones specifically, but if you can see from the title, this is about the Grishverse in general. I don't believe I read all the books because I haven't read Demon in the Woods, but I've read, I think, a good majority of the books, and I wanted to do a tier ranking of the books, and I'm going to talk about what I liked in each book, some things I didn't like in each book, as far as I can remember, because it's been a while since I read them. I have watched the show, and I do know the show doesn't follow the books perfectly, so hopefully I don't get things confused there, but yeah, let me just get into the video. Also, if you haven't read these, this isn't going to be spoiler free, so just be aware of that. I'm going to start with the Shadow and Bone book, the first book, Shadow and Bone. So for that book, I think I'm going to put it, I don't know. It was very cliched. I do recognize that. I think it was a little bit too young for me when I read it. Like, I can read books that are for younger ages, but I just think I probably would have enjoyed this more had I read it maybe when I was in high school. But it introduced me to the Grishverse, and I did like the characters. It wasn't my favorite, so I'm gonna put it in C tier because I think it's pretty. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. Feels like a good tier to have it in, and like I said, introduced me to the Grishverse, which I do like. So the next one I will do is Siege and Storm. I feel like, if I remember correctly, this was probably my favorite book from the original series. So again, even though it wasn't perfect, I'm going to really have to stagger these. I'm going to put it in, because I don't want it to be too small. I want you to be able to see what it is. Or maybe, I guess people would like it better if it fit in the box. This is what I'm doing right now. I have Siege and Storm in B, because if I remember correctly, I did find that to be the most interesting out of the trilogy. And yeah, I don't, again, there's stuff that I can't remember if it happened in the first or second or third book. So, but I do remember liking that. I think when I was reading that book, reading that series, I was most into that book. And then I'm going to do Ruin and Rising in C, because I think it was fine. Again, pretty cliched, pretty predictable. However, I do remember feeling like it was a satisfying conclusion, despite it being cliched, predictable, all of the above. I feel like it's not too bad, and I don't want to be too mean to that series because I do think it's pretty good. If I do recall correctly, I'm pretty sure that I read that Leigh Bardugo said that she even thinks she got better in her later books than she did in the Shadow and Bone while writing the Shadow and Bone series. So again, it wasn't really that bad. It was just, I think I would have appreciated it more had I not read other books that had similar premises. I do want to say, because like I said this in my fantasy book recommendations, I think her world is really interesting. It was something completely different than I had read before when it pertains to fantasy worlds. So I do think she created this really interesting world and this really interesting magic system. It's just, the original series was not my favorite. But moving on to what was my favorite from the Grishverse, The Six of Crows. Automatic S tier. This book, this duology had me feeling so many feelings. I love the characters. No offense to the characters in Shadow and Bone, but the Six of Crows characters, they're just misfit kids. Love them, adore them so much. I was more on board with the ships, all of the canon ships in Six of Crows, I think, than I was in the Shadow and Bone series, because again, it was very cliched in the Shadow and Bone series, and the Six of Crows ones weren't like beat for beat, I know what's gonna happen with these characters, with these ships, with just the storyline in general. Whereas Shadow and Bone, there was some things that I guess weren't as predictable, but it's just like, yes, this is who ends up with this is this and that, this is this kind of storyline. Whereas Six of Crows, yes, you kind of knew who was gonna pair off, but the pining was so much better, and just they're getting to that point of being together was so much more interesting to me than in the Shadow and Bone series, and just the conflicts were a lot more interesting. I think Kaz's backstory is heartbreaking, way more so than the backstories of characters in Shadow and Bone, so sorry. But there's just something, all of them had such interesting backstories, and I think we're a little bit more well fleshed out than characters in Shadow and Bone. I don't know. This is just my opinion on all of this, and my experience reading these is I just fell way more in love with the Six of Crows characters and felt that they were a little bit more interesting than the Shadow and Bone characters. Next would be Crooked Kingdom. Now, I have to sit here and debate this for a hot second. Also, if it isn't obvious, I'm doing this on Canva because like in the last video, this is just where I have the easiest time making a tier list. Listen. I know what I know. Okay? I am comfortable. I am here because I'm comfortable. This is just how I work. Okay, so Crooked Kingdom. I loved this book for so many reasons, and I want to put it in S tier, but it broke my heart. It made me cry. The ending made me cry, but I wasn't even mad at, like, normally okay, so because this isn't spoiler free, I'm just gonna talk about it outright. Nina and Matthias, I can't remember how they pronounce his name in the show. Matthias? Nina and Matthias, love them, adore them, wanted them to be together forever. I cried when Matthias was killed, but I think it was written so well that I moved on from it quickly. I wasn't like, this is not canon. You know how when a character dies and you're like, this absolutely should not have happened, so it's not canon? I accepted it, but I hated it. I both hated and accepted it. It was very complex in my mind, in my heart, where I felt it was well done. I hated that it happened, but it was well done. So the only reason I wouldn't put Six of Crows in the S tier is because I feel like something needs to go in the A. But I think I'm gonna have to put it in the S tier just because I felt like it was so well done. I don't know, I really liked this duology. I was surprised by how much I liked this duology because the original trilogy was just kind of okay to me. And I don't know, and then normally I'm like, you absolutely have to tell me that these characters got together and that they're in love. But the way that Kaz and Inej were done, I didn't mind that it was more open-ended. I feel like, yes, it's very much inferred that they get together. However, I feel like for their characters and open-ended, maybe they got together. It's implied that they got together, but I'm not explicitly stating that they got together. I think that was perfect for them. And then we love Wylan and Jesper so much. The one, like, wholesome, they still have their issues for sure, but the one more wholesome relationship in these books. I just have so many thoughts. I'm just putting those both in S tier. I thought about putting Crooked Kingdom in A tier, but no. Because now I have to move on to the King of Stars. The King of Scars. Okay, so, before I say that, talk about this. I do think the Six of Crows duology did a good job setting up the King of Scars duology. However, I don't like the King of Scars duology. I was so pumped for that because I really like Nikolai. I think he's a really interesting character. However, I didn't like these books. They went off the rails. It's just Hane. That's who Nina ends up with. I can't remember if they keep their name, Hane, at the end of the duology, but I believe they still went by Hane. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong, but the only reason I really took issue with Nina ending up with Hane is because it's this big tragic ending for Matthias, and then I felt like she just moved on too fast when she was sitting there like, they have this whole, they're soulmates and they will see each other on the other side. And it's not that I don't think Matthias would have wanted Nina to like be happy and move on and stuff. It's just, it happened a little too quickly for me. And of course there wasn't enough content of the other crows. I ended up just being my favorite characters. So I did like Zoya and Nikolai together. I think that was my favorite part of this entire duology. I can't remember what happens in which book, so I'm kind of putting these together right now. I don't like how they brought back the Darkling, because that's just something that bothers me when the big bad, like, oh, he's not actually dead. It's kind of like somehow Palpatine returned. You know what I mean? I think it just kind of went off the rails, adding new stuff to the world that wasn't really necessary in my opinion. I think that's kind of stuff that happened at the end of King of Scars. Why do I keep saying Stars? The King of Scars, when they go to that alternate universe where they're with the saints and that kind of stuff. It's interesting. I like Zoya's storyline and her transition into being more powerful. I just felt like it went too off the rails. It added more to a already really solidified world that felt unnecessary, and it just kind of felt all over the place. I'm not the only, I don't know. Am I the only one that felt it was all over the place and the storyline wasn't that solid? It didn't feel as well planned out as some of the other ones. It just felt like I need to do more with these characters. I need to give them more of a conclusion, and I felt a lot of those characters had a good conclusion. So, starting with the King of Scars, I said it right that time. I was about to correct myself and I said it right. I think I'm going to put it in the D tier because in the beginning I wasn't that put off by it. But as it kept going, I was like, I was just less and less into it. And again, I do like Zoya and Nikolai together. Now I have to put Rule of Wolves in the... There was also multiple things. Okay, before I place this. There were multiple things which can be fine. I have read stories where it's a lot of different things going on at once. But for this, it didn't feel as cohesive as I think it should have. I just really don't know how else to criticize it other than it felt really all over the place. A big thing with Rule of Wolves, as I already mentioned, so many characters felt like they had a good conclusion, and this just went and destroyed that. So I've heard Leigh Bardugo say that she had to have casualties in war. People had to die, even if there were characters like Matthias, whatever. Like that, I think was the most heartbreaking. More so, I was so mad when David was killed on his and Genya. I think Genya, because I think when I was reading it, I pronounced it Genya. And then when I watched the show, it was Genya. So I might be mixing that up. But Genya, on their wedding day, he was killed. And I completely understand it's a casualty of war thing. It could have been anyone else, and the reason why I say this isn't because, oh no, you killed like a good wholesome character, you killed like one of the more, he wasn't really a main character, but he was a more featured character in these books, and it wasn't because of like, oh, I just liked his character, why'd you kill him? It was because, why does she hate Genya so much? Genya could not catch a break in this entire series until she finally gets David, and I think like, I'm okay, it was too much of like, it felt to me, I know I'm not making a lot of sense right now because I'm very passionate about this, but it felt to me like it was just trying to be edgy. And I don't mean to be mean when I say that, I'm so sorry if that comes off as mean, but it's okay to have a happy ending for a character, and it's okay to instill hope, and I understand if you are trying to make a darker book. However, the rest of the series is a lot of hope, and like in the end, like things work out for everyone except Genya. And that's why I was like, why does she hate her so much? Her story is just so tragic all throughout, and then it's like, oh, she finally is with David, she finally has some happiness, even though she still has trauma, even though she still has scars, she still had issues. She didn't have to lose David, and then I just think like, oh, and then she's really depressed after that. Like, Jenya's ending is she's just really depressed, and it's really sad. And personally, I think like, that's the least worst reaction. You know what I mean? Like, her just being depressed. Like, Genya, after all she's been through, I just don't understand why she hated her so much. I just wanted her to catch a break, and then when she finally did, she killed off David, and I really felt like it was to be like that shock factor that it didn't really need. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't an edgy story and then suddenly there's some edge to it that it just felt like, I don't know, maybe to try to be a little different. And I really feel like at this point the Grishverse was a little milked out. And she could have just been like, again, I'm not hating on Leigh Bardugo because I do think she's a pretty good writer. I think, like I said, she created this very interesting world. She has a lot of characters that I really like the Six of Crows characters. I love them. And I think what she did with this new magic system, with the Grisha, with the way that there's like modern technology like guns, but then they still use their magic and use them with the guns and that kind of stuff. I just think it's an extremely interesting world, and I think she did a really good job creating that, and I think she is a good writer. I feel so bad because I don't want to be mean. It's just my criticism of these books is felt like they were milked out, and I don't know if she was just trying to do something different from the Shadow and Bone series, because I know a lot of criticism, and even myself, I have said that it was pretty cliched, and you kind of like knew what was going to happen. So maybe it was just like that shock factor that she felt like she had to do something different by killing David. But to me, it just felt like she hated Genya. So I'm just going to put that in F tier because I felt like by the time I was reading Rule of Wolves, like it felt very milked out, the Grishverse, and it felt very, I don't know, it didn't feel as much of a cohesive story. There were so many different pieces that didn't necessarily have to be a part of the story. And yeah, this is just, I haven't read Demon in the Woods, so this is my full tier list of the Grishverse books, and I really hope I wasn't too mean to Leigh Bardugo. Again, I think she's a really good writer. I just didn't like those last two books, because also it's a lot of stuff. She could have been pressured by her publishing company to make these two books, you know what I mean? And I still love Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I just, you know, it wasn't for me. Other people could have loved these books. It's just personally, I am fine with a happy ending for people like Genya. I would have much preferred that, and I think just I would have been happier had things ended with like Crooked Kingdom. Even though there were still some questions about the world, I felt like they didn't necessarily need to be answered. And it's okay if you disagree with me. Like, I have no issue with agreeing to disagree on fandom stuff. So, you know, if you want to comment down below your opinion on these books, how you felt about King of Scars, Rule of Wolves, the original trilogy, Six of Crows, I am 100% open to hearing other opinions, and I hope that you can respect my opinions and understand that they don't invalidate your opinions. And that was just my feelings on the book. So if you like this, please like and subscribe. I do a longer video every Saturday. Sometimes I do them twice a week. I do shorts throughout the week. I've been trying to do three throughout the week, but sometimes it's a little less than that, which would be about 2. But yeah, I mainly talk about fantasy books, but I talk about pretty much every book that I read, and I read lots of different genres. So I don't know what's happening right now. I just hope everything is okay. All right, bye.